I just saw a sleeping fairy. This is the time of year. It's so magical out here. Welcome everyone. Saul here. Welcome back. It's Februfairy of 2024. Today's going to be a little different. I just found a sleeping fairy. No, from time to time I find them. And I'll never forget, in 2020, I found one every single day of the month for Februfairy. Yeah. Anyways, I recorded it. I used the coffee stains to recreate the memory. 29 days, so I'm sharing 28 here. It's -1, because there was this one that was a bit, the story's a little louder and longer, so it's its own video. And then I wrote it down in a journal. I wrote down my thoughts. But I'll tell you, when you find a sleeping fairy, you just thank God that you got to see that, and then you get out of there. Because there's no telling what they'll do when they wake up. Believe me, you don't want to be there. It happened to me. But I gotta say, when you see them, everything's possible, you know? And I think it's a teachable moment. You just don't get greedy, and then you just leave. But just a little disclaimer, the fairies will make a man feel things very strange. Yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoy the film, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you think, any experiences, family members' experiences, friends, whatever. Take care. Bewitched, Fairies. Day the 1st. We all hear a bit of the shimmering folklore regarding the world of faerie. But not so much as to the versatile nature of their wings. Just as these creatures are known to bewitch their quarry with busy lights and hearts aflutter, they can lie still when they have been bewitched, no matter. She must conserve her magic lest she become overworked or harried with fatigue. Best not to have a cranky one. The poor little things can get cold if left to the harsh elements as they slumber. Mind you, take heed of the blanket you may use to keep warm as you listen to this. I entreat you to mark these great wings of hers, miraculous membranes as transparent as the fallen mask she wears in her most vulnerable sleep. And yet this little one, protected in her own special dreamland of creatures that even the fairies find fantastical. Day the 2nd. A fairy has to slow down sometimes. She's always causing necessary mischief, giving chase, escaping humorless old ladies, granting wishes, caring for giant neglected babies, haunting travelers, protecting forests, and finding the abilities to glow. All this becomes taxing on her tiny but mighty being. Nevertheless, the little darlings need to alight upon the earthen world if not to sleep, at least to rest and reflect. To recount the day backwards from this moment to waking in the morning earlier. Well, hello. She spies her friends, the snails. The monks of slower times offer up their shells to her. And as she sits upon one such shell, she takes in the sounds of the forest and smells of shade and dampness. The snail's pace. Only the little fairy can know how enlightening that can be every now and then. Day the 3rd. Sometimes the leaves give me away. They crunch beneath my boots to the consternation of creatures nearby of whom I shall never be aware. But that makes it all the more special when I come across one sleeping. It is humbling and disconcerting all at once. There she is, a heap of wild tangled hair and translucent wings. Even in her oblivious slumber she is weaving a memory which I shall carry to my deathbed. The silence here is more precious than gold, and I am eager to increase it with each millisecond. One prelude to a single sound, and she will awaken with a start and turn to me with cruel yellow cat's eyes and bolt away with a tiny but chilling scream. I secretly plead with the nearby crow to stay his caw, as I do for myself to hold my breath just a little more, as well as any other urges, not least of which is the wanting to reach out for her. Day the 4th. Such a long day. She fades away from consciousness, mumbling thoughts of what needs to happen when she awakens next Monday at twilight. Her busy glow fades as her eyes close. She yawns and pulls her wings lazily over her midriff. It's a comfort. Her last thought is how strange that her reserve should be, to toil endlessly and seem to be at the ready as long as the enchanting, bewitching, manipulative work needs doing. But still, that moment, as soon as she finds a stopping place, and she is floating over to her chosen toadstool, she begins to finally feel heavy. The joints wherein her wings meet her back begin to show their burdensome pains. Keeping herself in the air seems slightly easier than holding up her glittering eyelids, which may as well be made of golden bricks. As she nears the cap of the toadstool, a yawn delivers another blow to her wits, seeming to numb her uncontrollably. She almost misses the landing, which is the easiest thing at any other time. But when a fairy gets overworked and sleepy, she can be the clumsiest thing in the world. You would think they would avoid this state. They can be stubborn little buggers. The younger ones, like this one, willfully test themselves against fatigue, seeing it as some sort of outside magic spell that another jealous fairy placed on them. So sometimes they will spend 3 straight calendar days awake rather than sleeping through the 12 hours of daylight. But most of all, these ethereal youngsters inevitably have to go through this before realizing the innocent wonders of nature and surrender. Things like sleep are a noble state to be in, especially when they begin to live and fly and play in the dream world. Day the 5th. In my daydreams I dream of her while she is fast asleep, and it is my hope she is dreaming of me as well. But a shiver comes upon me. I wonder, if she is dreaming of me, what dark arts is such a mischievous fairy up to in the inexplainable laws of the dream world? I look upon her now. I am lured by the obliviousness of delicate sleep, all aflutter in the slight flicks of her glittering golden eyelids, the breath of the warmth around that copper-brown hair around her ear, the trees creak in the soft breezes of the sunlight. Fie on that blinding, happy light which illuminates all things, leaving little to the powers of intrigue and imagination, numbing the senses to seek the beauty of shadows. This light holds little interest to the world of fairies. Gaze transfixed upon this resting one, clad in pure contentment and great protected winged blankets. You can see the universe. You can fawn and yearn and take her in. She is at the mercy of anything that comes upon her here, and yet I know not what she has in store for me, whence it is my turn to retire to the realm of sleep, realm of night dreams. There's that shiver again. Indeed, who is the vulnerable one here? Day the 6th. You cannot look upon a sleeping fairy at times and feel sad for them. The exhausted ones have a look of splattered limbs, of what Wilde might have said resembled a crushed flower. Their wings are not neatly folded or their hair ethereally smoothed, but in a strange opposition to the rest of the forest folk, the Fae do not always sleep in the most symmetric of curled-up positions. Behold one off in her slumber and feel chaos and tenderness at the same time. But fear stirring her from this sacred state while she thrives and gathers her strength in the world of dreams. Alas, wrench her away from here, she will be a frightful thorn in your side with fairy grudges, scheming, stalking, and comeuppances waiting to be unleashed. You may be cursed, or worse, she will spare you and quietly follow you. Wait until you take a lover, alight on the beloved's window, with a transferred curse. You don't want that, do you? There now. You saw her. You found one. That is a rare find indeed. Now, best back away. Careful you don't crunch the leaves. Easy now. Watch out for that deafening twig, my friend. Now then, turn yourself around and walk away. Faster now. You are almost there. Day the 7th. At twilight she will wake, somewhere else and yet returned. She will have lived a lifetime before those sparkling eyes flutter open. The dying day will acquiesce to night. The groggy birds will surrender to new creatures and wisps and sounds. The priceless strands of her hair will have blown about her face like the last protective respite from the annoying breezes of reality come to awaken our exhausted enchanter. Last night she protected abandoned babies in the forest and cast sickness spells on the ones who refused to sleep. She dodged the jaws of annoyed wolves, and she wove webs of sudden infatuation to turn mortal enemies into a chance encounter of feverish lovers. But this is all taxing for such an otherworldly being. So she retreated to the land of Fae or Fairies to replenish her reserves. She collapsed into the sitting position, a heap of darling, high-pitched snores, tangled hair, and limp wings. And for all that ethereal accomplishment and acrobatic flitting from gopher hole to treetop, she wakes with a sore neck, cramps in her wing joints, and a pull in her lower back. Not the best position in which to dream. She moans to her trusty soft mushroom cap. It is twilight now. This forest will not enchant itself. Day the 8th. There is a realm wherein sounds refract as if light passing through a prism. Her sleep ebbs and flows in this realm. I have come here just to see her stirs and moans in a hypnotic sleep wherein one moment she sleeps thick as the bark of the black oak, or as soft as the evening breeze. The nearby croak of the frog burrows its way into the veil of her visions until it be transformed into the roar of the mighty winged elephant. But to the shy fairy, it is the frog who is the figment of her reality. Rather, she belongs to the pragmatic other world of the winged tusked wonder. She pulls her membrane wing above her head to shield from the dewdrops. Fantastical dewdrops at the edge of winter, yes. But in her dream it is a mundane shadow tap-dancing upon the old cobblestone stage in the blazing leaves of autumn. This is where she lives. In delicious dreams where sound is split into rainbows, spun from this admirer's whisper into her ear. Day the 9th. I can't help but sigh as I wish her a good and sound rest. My poor collapsed and melted enchanter. It's been a beastly day for you, hasn't it? Bewitching officers and future lovers, caring for grandmothers, lecturing murderous cats, etc. I admire the tired ones. They toiled all day for their mysterious craft, bewitching us with spells that appear helpful or nefarious. Hard to say which is which unless you are one of the spell-weaving ilk. No one knows the extent of the intentions behind their work. One spell may appear beneficial only to teach its subject to be careful what they wish for. I can't help feeling like she has woven a bit of gold and silver threads to ensnare me with the things a man thinks he wants, only to learn that there is a vintage of humility that ages like a Bordeaux when you linger over the thing for which you yearned and did not receive at the moment you expected it. Yes, I have heard her whisper in my ear, "Not now, but soon you will have the..." Oh, the little thing has had a day indeed. Hopefully she remembers my future when she awakens. Confound it. Day the 10th. Long ago, when she was a fey child, she learned, as all faerie do, the mushroom kingdom are her allies and her friends. They will talk to you, said the older fae. They will shelter you from rain or shine, and they will provide you with soft places on which to sleep. Then she meets the mushrooms and she plays with them. Then she learns their advice in the event it rains and they aren't around to give their services. They teach her to use her wings and fold them in certain ways, conic ways, and to curve them so that the rain slides off all around her. If she does it right, she'll be able to sleep like that. It's like you'll be one of us, and they laugh together. Then comes the day when the little fairy is alone, no mushrooms anywhere to keep her dry or shaded, and she must try out the mushroom suggestion. She clasps her hands and crouches into a sitting position. The rain starts to really come down. She carefully but succinctly laces up her wings to point or curve or bend the reins all about her. It feels cold at first. Ah, the human world can be so harsh. She wonders during these moments why she doesn't just find a hearth and stay there. But she breathes, and she breathes. Her wings begin to warm to the initial freezing jolts. Her body builds heat. No fey magic was needed. The mushroom spells did all the work. Her warmth is returning. The cold rain of earth is annoying her no longer. But it still makes the best sound. A day later she wakes up, still holding her wings that way. The mushrooms will be so proud of me, she whispers with a satisfied smile. Day the 11th. Once she stretches out her tiny glistening body across the great dark mushroom cap, their sinking begins. It is an unholy alliance incomprehensible to our small human spiritual brains, wherein the vast and seemingly infinite network of mushrooms known as the mycelium begins to commune and meander through the conduit of her blossoming dream. The mushroom itself will communicate through this dream to at last reach the world of faerie. Sometimes he is a shy one, but he feels at home in the golden webbing and glittering world of fae, for it is not unlike the mycelium from which he hails. Her slumber will last a few days, but they shall spend a lifetime together there. They will be both devourers and delicacies to one another. He grows everywhere as he brings to her world the mycelium. She is a rapturous sight to the fungi, part charm, part mischief, and he bulges up to behold this little one as she engages him in a raucous, fiery dance of writhing and gyrating, sending her feverish spells back through the mycelium to fungi in Bavaria, the Philippines, and the bush of Australia. He takes her in with all the fire, and the crescendo of her dances reaches fever pitch. And meanwhile, back in the realm of humans, all we see is the glistening of her perfect skin. and the rise and fall of her breath. Lean in, ever so quietly, and you will hear her give the smallest moan. Day the 12th. No one knows what he is. They have their versions, of course, each one taller than the last. They say he was one of the last mountain elves, and he stood over 2.5 meters. I said they were tall tales. He reigned before the first men were born. He still lives to this day. Where, you ask? It is the obscure forest and mountain caves, until the stink of civilizers come near. They say he travels on the winds of angry daughters and sons who wish justice for their fathers and mothers. Or they say he is one of these sleepy pixie folk. Hey, but truthfully, this great king of fairies is felt to the somewhat giant human folk in a vague presence only. That and a voice telling them it's time for bed. His gravitas gives way to the song of all songs, and as our little fairy nestles under it, he will tell her to breathe, surrender to her golden eyelids, rub her knees together, and fade into the twilight of the day amongst the magical mushrooms and rising crickets. She sinks into a state so deep that she can hear the one sound we humans want to hear more than anything. It is the sound of ancient trees singing to her. Day the 13th. You have not felt the wailing chill of the enchanted fae until you spy a fairy in the midst of sleep flying. Her sleep has all but burdened down her defenses, and this little somnambulist floats listlessly like a ghost, come to haunt the ethers where she once cast bewitching spells on hapless dwellers nearby. She is in no command of herself whatsoever. Marvel at her delicious loss of control as she hovers unbeknownst to her own being. There is no known cure for the sleep-flying fairy, and it is wondrous that she cares not to remedy this vulnerable state of hers. You can see the animals going about their food chains and stalking near her, but they take care not to notice, somehow knowing to keep a distance, lest the little dreaming spellcaster should wake up in a mood. I am moved to travel beside her, making sure she doesn't bump into a tree as I gently steer her with hands ever so sensitive from my days as a pickpocket. The fireflies pass her lazily by, and she floats on a strange cloud of oblivion with those long eyelashes of hers closed and tight-mouthed. I gaze upon the glow of her wings and the pulse of her core. It is just one of those things where once I chose not to see the magic afoot, and now I see it everywhere. Day the 14th. Her head hits her knee with a tiny thud, and poof, she is fast asleep. No sooner have her wings floated to the floor like worn rose petals that her astral wings begin to take ghostly flight. It's off to the stars above the world's unconsciousness with her. Now is the time to sail through the golden clouds of twilight to the blue ocean in the night sky. I want to fly there with her, away from my injuries which I grow tired of licking and mending, to lose myself in giving chase to her. She somehow has this effect on me. I will rejoice to be there in the night sky, just behind her as I turn to take my slumber there. And though the beast cannot be with his beauty, he can meet her in a thicket of sepia leaves and copper lakes, and he can hear her laugh away his dark night of the soul. And I shall awake in the morning a haunted man again, as the beast with weighted eyelids snorts himself to sleep. And I am grateful for the dream she gave me last night. Day the 15th. This one is a bit rapturous to this unfortunate onlooker as he is seized with an inner civil war, gazing upon her caramel-painted skin. On the one hand, he is moved and touched by her oblivious dreaming. He wants to gently, quietly lower down and kneel beside her, making sure no one or nothing disturbs her. On the other hand, he is seriously fighting off the urge to scoop her little self into his huge human hands and gobble her up before she has a chance to awake and squeak out a hesitation spell. That this covetous impulse of his would yield a satisfying union as her essence merged into his is reason enough to linger in this ghastly fantasy. But it is short-lived. He looks again at the peaceful thing and sighs. How awful he feels to have been possessed of such a ravenous thought to her. Indeed, what came over him in that moment where he almost acted on his dark hunger for whatever power she holds upon him? He gazes upon her once more. She is so quiet, unaware. Then he thinks to himself, that is what she is, unaware, right? He shudders. Day the 16th. Good night is a hard term. Good night is his worst nightmare, and sometimes his relief, poor Apollo. It seemed all day he was watching for her, trying to find her until at last he became tired, and now as he succumbed to the weight of his fiery eyelashes fluttering closed from all sight from the earth, he had no choice but to whisper at last to her, "Good night." Alas, and his light began to fade. The birds and cicadas thinned out their symphonies. Soon it will be for the crickets and the frogs to fill the darkening air with their voices, and then her dark eyes will flutter open. The deeds of the night will come now, the crafty work of enchantments, the spills of infatuation, the chills of the curses, the ceremonial undoing of his sanguine toils, split like a blow to his face by the hoot of the horned owl. Poor naive god of fire and light, stay tired as I come to rule the night, she whispers with thoughts that slither out into the moonlit realm of the huntress and the wolf songs. The revelry of evening rises to a pitch so feverish that by the time it is over, he will awaken again, haunted by the ghosts of dark merriment just out of reach from his obsessive rays of light. And he will search once again for her. Alas, she is already gone, again, asleep with wings folded, out of the day's reach. Poor Apollo. Day the 17th. It really is a miracle, you know. I mean these, the wings of a fae. Whence the fae collapses to the forest floor, face down, you can see her tiny but majestic ghostly membranes splayed out, stretched like a placenta across the damp earth, a mushroom cap, soft redwood bark, or whatever other dreamily comfort of a surface she decides to enchant into her makeshift bed. And that hair of hers, a tumbling, dark, and alluring testament to her oblivious neglect of its existence. How strange this is. As always, I am worried about her hearing the runch of my heavy boots as they approach the mud near her, and yet, Mr. Blue Jay there, he gives her every disrespect with his screeches, damn him. I shake a quiet but cursing fist in his direction, careful to be silent as I do so. But what a cursed commotion he's making! If it weren't for her who must not be disturbed, I'd be walloping him with any of these large pebbles. Of course, that is the strange thing about the fae. They can be stirred by the smallest sound of a man's jacket shifting. But animals? And women? Why, the fae, they will sleep right through all those sound factories. I suppose it's a survival thing, dreamed up by Mother Nature and her spirit sister, the realm of fae. Well, I am still ever grateful for these glimpses. Such a sweet neck. I am almost the distance now. I could touch it with my breath, but that is close enough. Again, don't want to wake the little thing. Sometimes when beauty like this has touched my day, it's a miracle as well. And that is enough. Day the 18th. I like walking through these fields in the morning. I get to smell the sweet morning dew, and you can hear the rooster as he gets his mojo going in the early hours. It's a charming moment of pride for him. Another reason I found is that if I take that walk, the time lines up such that the grass has a freshly pressed friendliness to it that a sweet little body may find to be just right. The time lines up such that the grass has a freshly pressed friendliness to it that a sweet little body may find to be just right. If so, she may spend up to 3 days ensconced in my massive boot print. And at the end, when the grass has at last sprung up all around her, she will wake like a small spirit rising from a grave of tiny twisted vines and old leaves. Sometimes I like to quietly revisit these literal stomping grounds. Hey, but it's a tricky business, with the possibility of my boots falling upon an unfortunate creature. Thus I bring a torch for my eyes in the rapidly failing twilight. It is tricky and tedious, but searching before taking every single step in there. Then, oh, there is one. Still asleep. Look at her. Just would you look at that? She is truly some splendor in the grass, and like all her fairy ilk, such a diligent nocturne, shielding the receding sun from her eyes with that teeny tiny paw of hers. It makes me want to lean in and give her some assistance with a bit of my shadow, but the darkness of another dying day soon devours the dark shape I cut. In the dusk it dawns on me that the world is no longer mine. It's about to belong to her. An impossible chill roars up through my heaviest of wool coats and all the way up my spine. I am jolted aware of the precarious light, and that the strange little being at my feet will awaken any second and find me there. God help me, what will she do? Day the 19th. Water in the desert. That is what a bit of shade under a helpful mushroom is to a fairy, a nourishing piece of secret night in the middle of the day's merciless glare. She will enjoy this shade in a dream of 3 days. Though she brings the light of enchantment, her world is of the shadows and the unseen. She sighs, contented in her last breaths before we lose her for a bit. It is a godsend, this shade, and this chance to pass out of the human realm until the 3rd day's twilight. There are many things to do when she comes back from the realm of dark dreams and golden fantasies. Reality will be challenged when she wakes. Atheists will become believers at the flick of her little wrist. Adversaries will ravish each other when she dusts them. Phantom forests will glow as her and her ilk move like floating lanterns through the misty ethers, making sounds of little bells and tiny laughter, magical to a child, chilling to an adult. The fates and destinies of her spell-casting obligations await as she approaches the 3rd day of her slumber. It is twilight now. Her petite yawn wriggles away from her sparkling mouth. She wipes the glittering pixie's drool away. She turns over. Just a little more sleep, she sighs, and the forest loses the tired fae for another 3 days. Day the 20th. She has been here before. Between the places she visits, between sleeping and waking, there's a whole other world. She hears stories from her giggling peers as they fly about wispy birches, and they tell her she was flying in her sleep again. They laugh and tease, but the thing they don't say is that they all feel slightly scared of her. They feel uneasy during those strange, chilly nights whence her wings glow and she twists and writhes, possessed by the world in between, as they refer to it amongst themselves. They tell her the forest seems to get, somehow, thousands more shadows. When she is taking this drifting flight of sleep, to her, the forest is changed as well. It is a memory of cold, foggy branches of birch, maple, and sycamore, and also of the thick green and wet overgrowth of moss and canopies. It may befall the mighty Amazon, yes, but also dark hair. her long damp locks everywhere like black vines. The creatures are all howls, the merriment of distant parties, and whispers of pranking fellow fairies, and songs of the happy fox. She can awaken in a spot miles away from whence she fell to sleep. If she is lucky, her enchanted sisters will have been weary not to let her stray too far out of the woodland. But sometimes the loneliness takes her, as it does to a fae, and when she exhausts herself at last, passing out into the dead leaves, she soon arises, again, halfway between the extremes, like a ghost trapped in unfinished business who goes listlessly to the scene of their greatest heartbreak or favorite memory in which to live. But the softest sound of a hunter's careful heel grinding the leaves will bring her right back to his realm, and she will be poised, eyes black with a fury to curse. And when the fairy folk see what she does next, they will be right to tread carefully around her. It doesn't help that she tells them they are acting so eerie towards her. Day the 21st. This sauntering one, dragging her impossible membrane flying tendons behind her. How can I describe the sound they make along the wet clay of our world? Because, you see, she is so small and they are so light that you cannot hear them unless you are looking directly at them. You need to be aware of that softest sound by seeing it, pinpointing what that gentle hiss is and knowing that it is happening. Such a tricky little sleepwalker. These elegant wings will scrape mud and slime, and this is generally the one time they do so. When our enchanted somnambulist is stalking the quarry of her dreams, sometimes her feet will trudge through the thick wet earth at a painfully sluggish pace, with strange wet sounds. In her dreamscape she meets the slow motion of her endeavor in stunted admonishings, the harder she tries to move faster. Or she may have the all-too-familiar flying dreams in which the only thing the little one seems to believe about herself is her innate heaviness as it pulls her to the eager ground like a stone to the depths of the Atlantic. But consider this. Here she actually wants to fall. At times she only wants to plummet. What a strange dream that should be, yes? You see, her nightmare is about losing her gift of flight. But the dream of a sleeping fairy sometimes is just to walk and look at her walking there in her dreams. She is luminous. Day the 22nd. The sunbeams turn white when they kiss the morning mist, and fresh steam careens up from her nocturnal body. There is something touching about the position in which this little one sleeps. She sits there, her stately forehead resting on long forearms, crossed upon her knees. The sunrise fae is completely passed out into her dreams. Seeing her there, she seems almost sad. I am curious if she will stay like that the full 3 days of her sleep. It is one of those great mysterious juxtapositions of nature to me. You have the warmth of the sun radiating, painting her skin as she sits in her favorite circle of wild mushrooms. It is almost heartbreaking how, in a dream that sees her drowning in a flood of her own tears, she seems unaware of the golden light all around her. I hope it isn't so sad a dream as that, but looking upon her, I am possessed of a sadness myself. I want to run back to my cabin and weep, yet I want to stay and wake her. But never wake a sleeping fairy. She will curse you in her stark annoyance. I have to keep my wits about me. This is just the sort of trouble befalls a man comes near a fae. Be careful the way you give over to emotions when you are around them, for these feelings are often not your own. It is a conundrum. On the one hand, they feel more intense than any emotion you have had, but on the other hand, they feel unnatural to ignore. They are intense emotions coming from within you after all. I wouldn't presume to be the first to underestimate these tiny creatures whilst they huddle, forlorn amidst these misty morning mushrooms. I remember ravenous Raymond, after all. He wandered into these woods on that fateful day, and soon after, he was newly christened by the thoroughly disturbed townsfolk. When asked why he had done the chilling deed, he said, "The little ones, in the forest." He said, he felt them feeling him, feeling them feel things. Yes, we all laugh at that now famous explanation of his. It was in the papers. Soon tourists started visiting the town, but no one, and I mean no one, comes here. Until now, and being here, feeling what is coming up to me, I know why. Day the 23rd. A candle is blown out, and the age of smoke begins. Where once was a brilliant glow, now a waft of spectral smoke dances. This is the physics, if you want to call it that, of our dreams. Our memory of the glaring sun snuffed out by the apocalyptic lowering of her eyelashes into the realm of faerie. An entire world of civilizations and countless histories reduced to a memory, forgotten in the laughter of returning to her other world. She is a being who lives in dreams. Our reality is her ephemeral vision during sleep. To her, our odd mundanity and laws of wake up, eat, and work are something exotic. She lives in the unseen and looks down upon the stark reality and the generally visible. Her loyalty is the moon over the day. I cannot help but linger like a poised lynx as I observe her sleeping soundly. She is living many years for all I know. She is traveling worlds in those rapid eye movements. I can smell the tiny thing's hair. At least I think it is. She lies there scrunched like the fallen, used bud of a smudged white rose at the 2 a.m. end of a wedding reception. Her wings pulled around her naked self like dirty petals to keep her modest or warm, or both. I could follow those impossible wings of hers with my male eyes forever, traveling across these ethereal little things with my poet's thoughts and lifting them with my impure hopes and daydreams. She could grant my wish as she grows to be right below my eye level. And there is that wonderful nightmare as I travel through the portals of her deep black eyeballs. There are fierce winds all over here, howling in my ears when it isn't the sounds of churning, drowning waters. I am struggling to stay afloat in her depths and feel I've forgotten how to swim. The howls, the black coffee, like waters, the winds give way to her breathing on my ear, and the crescendo is my snapping to. I was possessed by a mere daydream, and now I look upon her again. She has placed her little arms between those tiny, sturdy thighs to keep warm. A chill roars through me. I had better leave now. Day the 24th. Those lips have slightly dried, barely stuck to these fantastical membranes of her silky wing. It rises and descends with her silent breath. It's as though she is kissing herself as she dreams. She falls into the stillness, serene and fulfilled, bathed in the peaceful smile of the sun. Her soft wing, a translucent veil snaking around her and living a precarious life between the breath and the late winter's breeze. Hard to believe she's so vulnerable to the wind and yet so powerful to whatever spell she has set her sights on. I am frustrated at such an impossible juxtaposition. But like all evolved men, I have grown rather adept at talking myself through such knee-jerk thoughts, and still, she is there, oblivious to everything, unaware. Or is she? The wolf may howl, the serpent may hiss, but there is something of a oneness between her and the cold, dark earth that allows her to enjoy a state of blissful surrender. I would never act on such a thought as I am about to confide to ye, but I cannot help but wonder what would happen were I to snatch her up into my hands and stuff her into my breast pocket and make off. Now, as I said, it's merely a thought. nothing more. But the more I linger, the more the temptation does, and every time I bat it away, it flies back like a, and this seems strange to say, like a darker version of herself. Yes, it is strange, but is it really me that is choosing to fight her? Or is she casting a spell to make me fight this unwholesome urge? Day the 25th. If your eyes happen to catch the event of the whistling sound in earshot, you will see that it is the sound of a fairy just as she loses the time mid-flight and plummets to the ground with all the speed of her fatigued and burdened eyelids. The little creature is now at the mercy of her great gliding wings as they whip and blow about her exhausted body. You might think that the baying of the air around her would provide for a pressing reason to stop the hurtling descent with a sudden burst of flight. Strangely, it does not as she half awakens, only to smile and go back to sleep, falling. Nay, this is all part of the strange dream that is our earth world to her. As her wings cradle her like a great silken hammock, she marvels at the tangibility of this. A single moment on this great blue orb. In the other realm, the moments have a way of happening simultaneously, but here she can fly higher, then swoop, then curve upward, then land on a branch. It is as though she is being carried by some wonderful sequence of successive energies. Imagine that, she thinks. Then, unaware of how many hours she's been indulging herself, her wings, her eyes, her limbs, they all give out with a complete sigh. 3 milliseconds later, she awakens from a 20-minute pixie nap. She looks around as her wings billow like sails over a glorious day on the Pacific. Her nose crinkles to a contented smile, and she nuzzles her head into her wing. Ah, I wonder what will happen when I meet the earth this time, and with a giggle to herself. Another falling pixie nap begins. Day the 26th. You can see the pale light of the huntress perfectly contained in the crystalline droplets adorning the little flower's many filmy wings. These petals of hers pulse here and there with the breath of her slumber. The flower herself is motionless in her latest shifted position to dream. The wind seems smitten with her as she tousles the alluring strands of hair that linger along her relaxed brow. The flower folds within herself, perhaps lost in the dream of meeting a delicious bumblebee. Her shoulders glisten to the epic journey of cyclical light stretching across the sky as the moon and her ever-radiating lover continue their eternal dance as if propelled by the sleeping flower's romantic dream-weavings. That blinding, generous suitor, the sun, wanders the day alone, burning brightly as his yearning grows until at last he finds her. She is in that place of the sky wherein the blue washes to purple. He calms a little when he sees her. Together their light bursts, first gold and then silver. He quiets near her, the poor sun, spending the day searching wildly and loudly for her, and here at day's end, when he is exhausted and humbled, more sensitive and more reflective, having removed his bright and frilly loud party cloud, she appears. She removes her many layers of darkness, and he dispenses with his many shrouds of light until his fire is laid bare before her as her merciful validation of radiance. She sings him to sleep. She takes his affections to offer up a light for those who have none. You cannot know what the flower dreams of as her body awakens and shudders open with a sweet yawn, her arms stretching out to all directions of this refreshed dark world, her filmy petals poised to take flight beneath the starry night sky, bathed in nourishing moonlight. No, you cannot know what the flower dreams of, and yet, as she shares a knowing look with the moon, who is all aglow in her savor of the recent meeting with her blazing lover, what else could it be? Day the 27th. At the edge of the forest here, you will hear the overlap of woodland creatures with the inhabitants of the wide cliffs overlooking the cold and salty ocean. Her enchanted imagination makes masterpieces as the sounds of barking sea lions enter her serene dreams. They become fantastical orchestras of creatures singing to her as she falls away from her lonesome day into a realm made to cherish her. She is awake no more, and yet her mask falls. She betrays a soft smile of otherworldly contentment, the kind you hear when the higher notes of a soft piano trickles into your ear. She stirs, mostly unfazed before plunging again into that world where the hiss of a million raindrops becomes maracas for her birthday. Her last waking thought was that she missed this, her favorite mushroom mattress, as well as this, her favorite mushroom pillow. They are always happy to see her, these two. She can feel their strange fungal grins when she returns to them. They vie for the ultimate service of holding up her body these 3 days of eternal sleep. When she leaves them each time, they will joke and quickly argue in futile, fungy fickleness that supporting her head is more noble a task, or that holding up her body is to be next to the goddess. They will stand about expanding in irate, mushrooming misery, doomed to hear the late-night bark of the sea lions. But then she returns. She alights upon them, surrendering her magical self to their vast, velvety caps. It is as though she were kissing them entirely with an entrustment of her body whilst her soul leaves it to go and dream. They know why they are here now, and they relax in the beauty of another marvelous trinity of symbiosis. Being this close to her dimpled cheek, the pillow only feels contentment. Her lips now and then move tantalizingly close as if to bestow upon his crown that kiss he has hungered for. Then there is the mattress mushroom, which experiences all the delicious rest of her, happy to absorb her surrendered burden into his fungal existence. This is the rapturous height of their being, and yet, if they could only see the regal beasts they may become sometimes in her visions. Day the 28th. Look at her, stretched out among great leaves and pebbles here in her giant forest. So still she is now, her little long hands and slender fingers collapsed onto her steady heart, her moonlit fingernails pointing through to her chest to her collarbone, as if leading my eager thoughts up her neck to those copper-brown locks strewn carelessly across her throat. Her last waking moment was so full of ecstatic feeling upon her touching the soft, damp, dark, shaded earth that she splayed out her wings and limbs as far as they could reach before constricting back into delicious relief. The feeling of dirt softened from the rain gives the slightest massage that she could not find in, say, a desert? Pshaw! The sand may as well already be blown, dried, and broken glass with how sharp it is to her skin. Besides, it gets everywhere, which is a bit painful when it gets under her winged joints. Impossible to clean. Oh, but here! What an exquisite joy it is to be surrounded by ferns, her beloved mushrooms standing at attention when she is near, the occasional firefly, chirping crickets, croaking frogs, leering toads in the twilight's breeze as it kisses her toes, and then her knees, moving up her sturdy thighs, blowing across her fairyhood, her navel, and then her breasts, sending shivers and laughter tumbling out of her slightly parted lips. She makes earth angels with her arms and legs as her wings slither all around her like the watchful snakes winding around the branches above and through the roots nearby. The eyes of the mischievous raccoons peer through the surrounding bushes. The wolf regards her in her strange outburst as if he were judging that she was a little too excited to be on the forest floor for being an enchanted being who deals in spells like creating watery blue silk or resurrecting dead crabs, or even turning lemons into giant jewels of topaz. No, but this generous ground is what she finds truly extraordinary. It is the dark places where no one else may find her but the animals. This is where she has always gone, seeking the peace of dark introversion. Here she may be sad, or passionate, or angry, or in despair. Here the dark world is sweet to her, and she is so grateful for it. Now she sleeps. She will hibernate for 3 days, merging with the fires of her hopes and dreams in the depths of her sumptuous slumber. Look at her, stretched out among the creatures, among the night's forest. She looks as though she is being loved by a phantom Orpheus. But there is no one but us beasts about. Let her sensuous sleep be forever, and me here to witness it. Besides, I must be careful never to wake her. She may become a beast here herself. Now comes the point. I just wanted to say that you all have been so supportive, and I thank you so much for that. All the ways that you've done it, whether it's sharing the video, commenting, or just enjoying the piece. And I hope that we continue on this journey together. I don't know what they'll do for anybody, but I felt like I've got them all here. Might as well put them in this burgeoning Ghost in the Gaslight library, and we will see what happens once they're out there in the world. I would absolutely appreciate it if you gave me a like, and maybe you left me your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think of these, or if you have any stories of your own. And thank you for coming here and experiencing this haunted channel. Take care.